Hello and welcome to another firefly beading tutorial. Today we're going to learn how to do silk or nylon knotting using tweezers and clamshell bead tips near the clasp. A couple of things you're going to need to get started are about 15 to 16 inches of beads. I'm using these little pearls right now. Bead tips, which look similar to this. They've got a hole in the middle and it's called a clamshell because they'll close up like a clam. A clasp, cutter, something to cut with, knotting tweezers, and Hypo cement or some kind of super glue with a small nozzle. It would be helpful to have round nose pliers and chain nose pliers too. You'll notice that the cording has a number at the top here. This is a size 3, which works for most pearls. Usually small pearls like this are a 2 or a 3. I'll show you how to double check that the number you're getting works for your beads in a second. So the first thing you're going to do is unravel everything off of here. All of our packages come with a needle pre-attached, which is awesome. So you unravel it all the way and then pre-stretch the cording just by pulling one way and then pulling the other way. What I'm going to show you first is how to check that the cording you have will work for your knotting project and your beads that you've chosen. At the very end, on the opposite end of the needle, I'm going to tie just a simple overhand knot as close to the edge as possible and just make it a tight knot. And this is to check my bead up against the knot. If the bead doesn't slide off, then you know that this cording will work for your beads. It's easier to use beads with a consistent size hole. So you put on your first bead on the needle and then you slide it all the way down to the knot. And if it doesn't slide over the knot, you're good to go. So this size 3 will work for what I'm going to do. Typically when you're knotting with pearls, you use silk and then you use nylon with gemstones and glass. Nylon is typically a bit stronger than the silk, but the silk is nice and soft for the freshwater pearls. So what I'm going to do is I'm just going to clip off that knot. I don't need it anymore because I'm actually going to need a bigger knot to go with this clamshell bead tip. So I'm going to do what I did before and do an overhand knot, but I'm going to make it a double overhand. So I'm going to go over once and then bring it back through again. And I might need my tweezers for this. So this is called a double overhand knot. You go over once and then over again. And you're going to pull everything tight. Get all the slack out of that knot. And the next thing we're going to do is slide on our bead tip. Pay close attention to how you're putting this on. So go all the way back to your needle and slide it on with the clamshell opening up towards the knot. So you've got your needle here and you're just going to slide it in like this. Think of it like Pac-Man going to eat a little ghosty. So you're going to bring it down to the knot. Make sure that knot doesn't pull through. It's holding on really good. Alright, so now we're going to actually glue this knot before we cut the tail off. This is why this Hypo cement is amazing, because it's got a sweet little needle on the end of it for precise glue drops. So we dab some glue on there. Let it dry for a second and then cut off the tail. Now here's where you want to use your chain nose or flat nose pliers to close up this clamshell bead tip, which I couldn't find right now, but I just used my fingers to close this one up. Typically you would want to close it up with a nice tool though. So now that you got your clamshell on, we're going to start at the working end, so down by your needle. We're going to slide on your first bead. Bring that bead all the way down up against the clamshell. And then do an overhand knot and pull the thread through. I put the tail back behind and then I take my tweezers and I go through the loop and then pinch right next to the bead. And then slowly pull my tail and very carefully pull out my tweezers and continue sliding the knot down. So again, you're going to slide on a bead. I'm also stretching this as I go, just pulling a little bit taut to keep everything stretched out. But go ahead and put on your next bead. You could use this next bead to really push the previous knot down too. But bring it all the way down, then do an overhand knot again, pull everything through. And have a closer look here. You use your tweezers, put it through the loop, through it, and then grab right up against the bead. And then pull everything down slowly. Very carefully remove your tweezers, and then very gently push the knot down against your pearl. Nice and tight against it. So once again, put on your bead. You can use this bead to push the knot down a little bit further to the previous bead. Overhand knot, bring down the tail, pull it back, and then put in your tweezers through the loop, pinch next to the bead, and pull down. Slide down. And repeat this process. In a few seconds, I'll show you another way to do this knotting process with the pearls already pre-strung. But until then, here is just an overview of what we just went over. Last look at this method, you pull the pearl down, overhand, through, back, tweezers through the loop, grab by the bead, pull the tail. Then gently slide the knot down. Don't pull too hard or you'll rip the thread. But here's another way to do this. If you don't want to pick up a pearl and string it on each time, then use the one pearl to go ahead and push down your last knot. And just go ahead and string on the remaining pearls. So I'll show you a few here. So basically just straight string the rest of your pearls on. So I just did a few here to show you, but you could do the entire strand of pearls just like this. So you've got a knot, bead, knot, and then all your other pearls. So again, there's a knot at the end here, and then a little sliding bead. So pull that bead down. Now we're going to make an overhand doing it this way. So we're going to loop it around our fingers, then pull all the pearls through that are knotted already. Go through the loop from the top this time, and again, same idea. Pinch right beside the previous bead and pull down using your tail, and then push the knot down against the bead. So slide down your next pre-strung pearl, push the knot up against the other bead. So do overhand, pull your knotted strand through, then put your tweezers through the top and grab up against the bead. Pull the tail slowly and slide the knot up against the bead. Finish out using the tweezers to pull it down, and also your next bead to pull down the knot. And again, overhand, pull everything through, tweezers through the top, grab next to the bead, pull tail, slide everything down. So these are the two different ways that you can string a strand of pearls or beads. And then you're just going to repeat either process all the way to the end. I find it easier to go ahead and string all your beads on and just do it this way, but it's just as easy to do it the other way. I'm just going to show you this process a few more times so that you can understand it. biggest thing is to just keep these knots tight against the beads using your tweezers and then the next bead that you're pulling down. So at the end here, I've got 3 more beads left. So I'm going to bring 1 bead down and continue this process. I'm going to do a knot. Put my tweezers through, grab next to the bead, and pull down my knot. And I'm going to do it again with this one until I have just 1 pearl left, or 1 bead left. So with my last pearl or my last bead, I'm going to slide it all the way down to help push that knot up against the previous bead. And then what I'm actually going to do, so you can see there's a knot and then a sliding little bead here. So then what I'm going to do is I'm going to take my needle and I'm going to actually thread on my clamshell bead tip, the opposite of what we first did. So now we want the clamshell facing up. So we're going to bead it like through the bottom and out. And then what we need to do is do a double overhand knot inside. So bring it through once and twice for the double overhand. Move your tail out of your way and grab your tweezers and go through the loop like we've been doing and grab up against the clamshell, which is up against the bead. So just like we've been doing. And bring this double overhand knot down in there. The double overhands are a little bit harder to maneuver than the single overhand knot, but just don't put any real tension until you need to. So just put all that tension down into the knot and make sure it slides into this clamshell nicely. And once it's in there, you can then get your Hypo cement. And do like we did at the very beginning. So this one got a little bit dirty. Let me clean that off. So you're just going to dab a little bead of glue right onto that knot. Sometimes I like to turn it over and get both sides. And then we're going to wait a little while, a couple minutes, to let that glue dry. So while we're waiting for that to dry, I found my chain nose pliers, so here they are. So we're just going to make sure I close this up correctly, like I should have done at the very beginning. But I used my fingers, if you'll remember, so use that to kind of make sure everything's nice and closed. And then you're going to slip on one end of your clasp. If I can get it on here. Okay. So you got one end of the clasp onto the bead end, the bead tip end. And I'm going to use some round nose pliers here to just close up this little tab that we have here. So I'm just going to round it out, and there is like a little tab, if you'll notice on the end, that I'm kind of putting down into the clamshell, but I'm not squeezing too hard. I want my clasp to swing nice and freely within there, but without sneaking out. So once the other side is dry, we're going to snip off that tail. And again, using your chain nose pliers or flat pliers that don't have teeth. These are a bit bigger than chain nose. But anything that doesn't have teeth that's fairly small will work. You're just going to close up your clamshell to hide your knot. Then slide on the other end of your clasp. And again, using round nose pliers, I'm going to grab the little tip here and close it up so it's flush and a little bit is inside of the clamshell. so it's a fully closed circle. And that is it. I hope you enjoyed this tutorial. If you've got any questions, please email us at info@fireflycarborough.com. Also, please like or subscribe to our channel or follow us on Facebook or Instagram. Happy beading from us at Firefly.